do something that sets you apart and it makes you excel, makes you like what you do, you will benefit from that.
Every great business begins with a bold idea. Welcome to Mission Entrepreneurship, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of extraordinary entrepreneurs who've defied the odds. Discover the relentless spirit and creative minds of those who dared to innovate and take risks. Together, we'll reveal the grit and determination it takes to achieve the unthinkable mission of entrepreneurship. If you choose to accept it.
Welcome back to Mission Entrepreneurship. I have Ross Corthell with me, and I'm really excited for this interview because I've gotten to know you through my relationship with Carly, and we've met a few times, but this is my first time to actually sit down and really get to understand you and learn more about you. And we're here in your lovely home just outside Sacramento, California. If you could introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Steve. So my name's Ross Corthell. I'm Vice President of Transportation for a major paper and packaging company here in the United States. We have 8 paper mills, about 95 box plants. And as part of my responsibility for transportation it's a supply chain job. So we're actually moving goods within our own supply chain and then ultimately out to customers as well. So we spend about $750 million on transportation. I also happen to operate a trucking company as part of that engagement. That the P&L for the trucking company is about $70 million. So we do about 10% of our total spend is done with our own trucking division.
Okay.
And then we also have a little short line railroad that we operate, and we lease about 1,800 rail cars through that. So we're heavy industrial. We make paper rolls. We ship those in rail cars and trucks out to our box plants, and then we convert the paper to corrugated containers for many uses. And so my function is to make sure that we do that safely, efficiently, cost effectively, and with high levels of service.
That's a lot of moving pieces.
It's a fair number of moving pieces. Absolutely.
So much delegation there. So if you could tell us a little bit about what led you to be able to get to a position where you said you're VP, right?
Correct.
I would like to like for Mission Entrepreneurship, what we like to do is we really like to dig into the journey to get there, because a lot of people will look and they only see the tip of the iceberg. They only see, okay, well, he's a VP, he's running things, he's got all this to do and everything, and people be like, well, how do I get there? And a lot of people don't really understand about the work it takes and the amount of time and everything that's put into it. If you could tell us a little bit about your background and where you came from and kind of what started to lead you towards the earning the skills and the things gained that you use now today to get to where you are.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, maybe where I should start, this is a podcast about entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. I work for a $7-8 billion company, and so I did not start that company. I'm not the entrepreneur. I am an employee, a W-2 employee. Honestly, the last time I ran my own business, I was delivering papers. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of the lessons that entrepreneurs learn through their careers, I've also taken on. I haven't taken the great risks that entrepreneurs do, but I've taken smaller amounts of risk throughout my career, and I think those risks are the things that really pay off for success. Just like an entrepreneur, you'll hear every entrepreneur say, look, I had to take some risk to do there. The risks and the hard work paid off. And that's exactly how I've lived my career as well, by taking, maybe not financial risks, but risks in new positions, risks in opinions. I've always been forward and aggressive with my intuitions and my education and my communication to drive the company forward. And even though we're a large company, we're very entrepreneurial in nature, in that the people that are closest to the business tend to be the ones that make the decisions. So we really try and decision making down in our company, and therefore cultivate many entrepreneurs in terms of how people make decisions, the risk that they take. Do they have, the bandwidth and the skills, to represent the business as if it is their own, and so that's kind of how we operate.
I actually I'm going to take a side here, because what you just said was pretty awesome, and I think that people who are running their own businesses and everything like that as well should know a little bit more about what you just said about how you push the decisions down. Because if I heard correctly, you're developing the future of the company by pushing those decisions and responsibilities down to then build people up for, like, if you could really elaborate a little bit more on that, because I think that our audiences who are entrepreneurs and are running companies should really understand that, because that's something that I believe in as well with my company. Is, we just hired our first employee, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm developing you to be right up underneath me. And
so my role ultimately is to set the strategy for how we're going to execute, and then break down barriers for my group. I often joke that I'm not really the vice president. I'm just the best paid executive assistant, because that's all I'm doing really, is assisting people and getting done what they need to get done. But those people that are on the front lines, that are seeing the business develop minute by minute, they are absolutely in the best position to make those minute by minute calls. And if they make a mistake, we talk about that, or we coach, those mistakes as learning moments, and not in a harsh way, but in a supportive and beneficiary way, to your point, for their own career development. So really, it's all about giving people the confidence, the commitment that management is behind them in terms of how they're making their decisions. What data are they taking in? I often tell my folks, their number one priority is to get me to shut up. And that's mainly because if I have nothing left to say, that means they've contemplated all the issues, they've made a great decision, there's nothing left on the table for me to say. Mm-hmm. So, that's what we're really shooting for. And yeah, that's absolutely about developing people's careers. I mean, that is absolutely what that's all about. If I'm sitting around in some glass tower pointing fingers and making, minutia decisions, then number one, nobody learns. Number two, nobody's willing to take a risk because they don't want to go against my decision making, whatever the king says, right? So we absolutely cultivate, a learning environment and a safe place for people to take risks, make decisions, make the business work.
It's awesome. So how long have you been with this company?
So I've been with this particular company for 11 years. I was with a previous company that was acquired by this company. So total in my transportation career, about 31 years.
31 years. So where did you start?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I had a paper route when I was in 6th grade.
I would love to start there. Honestly, that's where it is. I started with a paper route.
Okay, so then like one of the mistakes you make as a paper boy is, and this is a mistake I made really early on, because you might have some customers who are willing to pay you 3, 4, 5 months in advance. It's easier for them to pay you 5 months in advance than it is to answer their door every day when you come collecting, right? Mm-hmm. But so then you have a lot of cash on hand. You need to know how to manage that cash, right? Because you're not going to get the revenue for the next 5 months, but you are going to get the expense. Yeah. And so that was one of the first experiences I learned as a paper boy, is all about cash flow management. Mm-hmm. And I actually lived on my own as a senior in high school, and so I've really been working, pretty much all my life. I mean, from paper boy, I did some jobs on ranches. And then from there, when I moved out of my folks' house under good terms, it was just ready. We were all ready. Then I went to work. I started working at a golf course. After that, I went to a rental car agency. And after that, I started valet parking. And that's how I put myself through college, was parking cars.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and one of the interesting things about that is you learn really quickly when you're doing valet parking at a hotel casino, for example, and that's where I was, that you are the first point of contact for those customers, and you're the last point of contact. And you have a lot of responsibility to shape their experience right from the beginning and shape their experience right through to the end. And and as long as you're doing that, you're probably making pretty decent tips. If you're not making them have a great experience at the beginning and a great experience at the end, then you're probably not maximizing your own revenue potential. We're all about making tips in that job. Maximizing our revenue potential meant that we made those people feel good on the way in and the way out. And I felt like we were ambassadors to have people come back to that casino. And we had a lot of people that began to know our crew on a first name basis. At 17 years old, I started at that job. By the time I was 22, I was running the entire department, interfacing with the casino executives, setting the schedule, flexing the labor up and down to meet various parties and whatnot. If there was a wedding reception, for example, everybody comes all at once at a wedding reception, then they trickle out. So you have to be staffed to accept that large influx. And so that's the other skill I learned, is how to motivate a bunch of folks that are kind of college age. They're motivated by a lot of different things, but we had a finely tuned machine. We divided the labor accordingly. We had people that were really good at talking to customers. We had other people that were really fast at running, and we divided the labor and provided those people with an outstanding experience. So after that, then I got recruited, believe it or not, down to San Francisco. This is a funny but long story, so I won't go into the story. But bottom line was, the casino was going through an expansion, and they hired a parking consultant to come in and help them. Yeah, and the parking consultant was from San Francisco, right? And so here I was, a 22-year-old kid, and I'm barking at the general manager of the casino, who was one of the principal owners. And basically telling him, this guy from San Francisco doesn't know what he's talking about, right? And he says, well, just go talk to him. Why don't you guys go meet? And I said, okay. So after that meeting, I was offered a job by the consultant out of San Francisco, who ran a major parking company in San Francisco.
Wow.
So I made a leap at that time. Talk about taking a risk, right? I had never lived outside of the state of Nevada. I just took a leap at the age of 22, joined this company down in San Francisco, and within 3 years, I was their operations manager, running 75 parking garages and cash business, having to do the audits, having to do the cash management. I had 5 area supervisors under me, most of them with a lot more experience and a lot older than me. But
there's something I need to touch on that right there. I have a thing that I always tell everybody, is that people be like, well, what kind of job should I have? Where should I go? Especially at that age, where should I go? What should I do? Just get a job. Just get a job. Anywhere. People are like, but I don't know what I want. I want just go get a job and show up to work. Like you said, you show up to work realizing you're an ambassador for this company. Now that's like I always call that an entrepreneurial mindset. As much as you don't call yourself an entrepreneur, you've went through the like that. That's all the same exact stuff, It's finding those opportunities, but the idea of where you think a little bit differently, you think like a business owner, you think like, okay, this is the first person that I see, that the customer sees, and I'm the last person. So the customer acquisition and everything like that, it's like they see me, and the more people, the more people that are happy coming and going, more money I'm going to make. So, and also on top of it, like I'm the ambassador, just thinking things like that, right? And then to sit around at 22 when a lot of people would be like whatever, feeling like, well, I did it, so they should give me $5, But it's like, no, let's redesign all this. So what I want the audience to know is just get a job. You have no idea what you have no idea what you could be into. You just get a job and find the holes and start figuring things out, and you have no idea where that's going to lead. That is awesome.
I like the advice of just get a job, but I would caution against people that just treat a job like a job.
Mm-hmm.
Treat a job like an opportunity. So just get a job, fine, but then do something to excel at that job. Like do something that sets you apart and it makes you excel, makes you like what you do, because once you're excelling in that job, then you're feeling good about yourself. And if you're tying that to revenue generation, even if it's for the principal owner,
Mm-hmm.
you will benefit from that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been my strategy all along. I've had many opportunities come my way, mainly because I've approached it from what can we do to establish excellence within this department, within this role? What can we do to establish excellence to drive revenue? And almost all of my career choices have been around how are we going to take care of our customer, either internally or externally? What are we going to do to set ourselves apart?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a message that all entrepreneurs need to think about. Like, what am I doing to, number one, bring up the next generation, and drive that decision making. And then, what am I doing to drive revenue and make it and have an outstanding customer experience?
So we had you at now you're running you're working for that company and in San Francisco, and you're running things over there now. Take us from there. I'm really enjoying this. This is awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so one of the things that I learned, in my paper route was cash flow management. One of the things I learned in living in San Francisco, and I was making good money at the time. I had my own apartment. I had a great career, but it was and is an expensive place to live. And so, I was managing my cash. I didn't have any debt, anything like that, but it was consuming the overwhelming majority of my cash just to have the lifestyle that I had in San Francisco. And that's when I made a decision to move. And I just again took a risk. I had some money in the bank, and I just moved. I left my high paying job. I moved up to Boise, Idaho. Didn't have a job, and I remember it really well because nobody would rent me an apartment in Boise, Idaho, because I didn't have a job. And I can understand that, right? So finally, I got kind of savvy to that issue. And I was talking to a guy that had, multiple rental properties. I said, well, what's your 6 month lease? Or excuse me, what is your minimum lease requirement? He says 6 months. I said, okay. What if I give you 6 months rent right now? Will you now rent to me? He says, yeah, sure, I'll rent to you. 6 months later, I bought a house.
Nice. So how'd you buy a house?
Well, I again went in and got a job with a company there in Boise, Idaho. Started setting myself, apart from the herd right away. And even within 6 months, I was on a career track that was going to be a very positive experience. So, like I said, I had a little bit of money in the bank when I moved to Idaho, and I set myself a goal, to purchase real estate there, and I fulfilled that goal within 6 months. So my initial lease with him was 6 months. I paid all of that up front. So my rent was covered for the 6 months. I bankrolled money in my job, and I gave him the appropriate amount of notice, and I bought a house at the end of that lease. And I've never rented since.
That's awesome. So when was when was the moment that you ended up starting at the company you're at now, and like kind of what position were you when you started 31 years ago?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I started as a transportation analyst. So I was in transportation,
Mm-hmm.
and in a corporate transportation role, you're dealing with a lot of vendors. You're really in a supply chain role, but you're primarily looking to buy and contract freight services from from major railroads, from trucking companies, from warehouses, small and large companies. And so you're really in that role, you're facilitating the services through procurement and supplier relationship management, customer expectation management. And so that's how I started, really, in as an analyst in that. And again, set about to set myself apart. And within a few months of doing that job, I had a network of people throughout the company that I had interacted with that I had to earn their respect, just like anybody else. An entrepreneur has to earn their customers' respect. They have to do what they say they're going to do. They have to show up every day. They have to invoice properly. All of those things, to earn your customers' respect, and then again earn their repeat business. Mm-hmm. I had a whole internal customer mindset. I wasn't just another employee in talking to other employees. I was a service provider, talking to internal customers and selling them on my capabilities, and they, kept buying.
That's awesome, and I can see how how that can just go all the way back to the valet, we're the ambassadors of the company. You see us, but like at that small level, now you're in transportation, and you have this whole idea of, about your customers and about how to. It's so cool when you look at the grand schemes of so many years, right? That the simple little seed, right? that ends up growing into this great red oak,
Yeah, right. Well, it's really the intense focus on the customer that gets you there. Mm-hmm. And that's internal customers, external customers, new customers, longtime customer, intense focus on that. And it actually even goes back to being a paper boy. As each customer of your paper route had a certain way that they wanted their paper delivered. I mean, you could roll down the street, throw out papers all day long, but some of them wanted it behind the pot, behind the planted pot and if you didn't pay attention to that, as a 12-year-old, then you didn't make as much money as if you did pay attention.
Or the grass.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. I accidentally walked on one of my customers' grass.
Yes.
And I will never forget. I could not hear the end of that. Like, oh my God. He would wait on the porch to stare at me while I brought the paper up there. Yeah.
And those are lessons. Like,
exactly.
You're in sixth grade, it'd be easy to say, "Oh, I'm gonna next time I'm gonna ride my bike across his lawn." Yeah. Like, no, you have to pay attention to that, because if you don't, if you do, they may give you a tip.
Exactly.
If you don't, they won't. So you're driving your own revenue by having that intense focus on what your customers want.
Well, this has been awesome. I've really enjoyed learning more about you and your journey. We're probably going to wrap up here in a little bit, but what I want to ask is when it comes to your entire journey, right? And just the what you called it earlier, the series of 5-yard runs.
Yes.
Series of 5-yard runs. We might call this episode that, the series of 5-yard runs. Is there anything that you could, any advice that you would give to my audience, where mainly, say, if they're trying to build something, maybe they're trying to figure out what they want to do in life, or they're working that job, but they're giving it their all, and they just feel like giving up. Is there any words of encouragement or any advice that you would give to them?
Yeah. So again, I've said it a couple of times, find a way to differentiate yourself, either as an employee or as an entrepreneur, the intense focus on your customer. Sometimes it's hard to figure out who your customers really are. I mean, and sometimes it's right there in your face, but there's other people. Maybe the people that you're buying fuel from, if you're running heavy equipment, they're not just your vendor. You're their customer. They're your customer as well. Like if you don't show up and do things that benefit their business, then they might fire you as a customer. So you have to treat every one of those relationships as if you're willing to, put 100% into it. And it doesn't matter if you're working with a vendor or a customer. So find a way to differentiate yourself, figure out who your customers are and service the heck out of them. And then rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat.
All right. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you sitting down and talking with me, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely, Steve. It was a pleasure as well.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Take two.
Sorry, Mr. Steven, you were too intense and you were covering the mic with your beard.
Okay.
I don't know if I sneeze or fart or something.
Charlie does all the editing, so it's on her. Yeah. Yeah. Facebook Live. Make or break moment.